through the things that have been prepared. I'd like to take a moment to welcome those who are joining us online right now, or if not now, a little bit later on in the week. Welcome to this very special time. It is very special to be together in greater numbers, isn't it? And particularly earlier on to have our children and our young people with us as well before we sent them off to their various activities. Very struck by Barbara's picture, shared about the parts of the body that have gone to sleep. And what struck me was you talked about how your other hand needed to come and, if you like, call back to life, to bring sensation back. I think that later on in the service we'll have some opportunity for prayer. And I'm going to be thinking while I'm preaching on how we do that. But I want to just ask you now, if that somehow resonated for you, that sense of a loss of sensation, a numbness, perhaps, spiritually, then I think it will be good for us to really minister to one another in that. And I'm going to think about how to do that later on. But I'm just signaling now that if that's something that's particularly gone home for you, then hold on to that and let's see if we can respond in prayer. Thinking today about confidence. Confidence in how we live and move in the world. How does that come about? Where does confidence come from? Some of the given readings for this week give us wonderful examples of confidence. I mentioned in the start of the 10, David going up against Goliath. But there is also in the New Testament reading for today a picture of the disciples of Jesus, now called apostles because they are sent ones, being thrown into prison, escaping from prison with a bit of help from above, and standing in the marketplace, boldly proclaiming the resurrection of Jesus. And they're hauled into the Sanhedrin, the religious authorities, and asked, what are you doing? We told you very clearly not to do this. We commanded you to stop speaking about this Jesus. And their reply is, we can't. We can't stop because we've got to obey God and not you, not men and women. We've got to obey God. And then they go on to proclaim again how Jesus, who had been crucified by you, they say, quite pointedly, with the help of wicked people, God has raised from the dead and exalted to the highest place. Now, I was interested in that picture of confidence on the part of the apostles, because it wasn't that long before that these same people were in a locked room, cowering, frightened for their lives. That's where we're going now for our reading this morning. That's where we'll meet them. And we're going to be keeping an eye out for, how did this change? How does a frightened bunch of people turn into that confident movement in the world? So let's read together from John chapter 20. And let's see what's going on here in this room that's locked. On the evening, this is John chapter 20, verse 19, on the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together, with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord, and Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." And with that, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, their sins are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven. Now, Thomas, also known as Didymus, and I can never say that without a smile, one of the 12 was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands, reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book, but these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and by believing you may have life in his name. Gosh, there's so much going on in that passage. The doors are locked. It seems that all those security measures are no hindrance to Jesus. I wonder what security measures we've got going in our lives, individually, corporately. Know this, that Jesus has a way of finding his way in. It's a good thing too, isn't it? It's a good thing too. Jesus comes in through our security, the locked doors, the things we may have deemed necessary to be safe. Jesus comes in with his peace. 3 times he says, "My peace I give to you. Peace to you. Peace to you." And then a week later, when Thomas is in the room and the doors are still locked, "Peace to you." The risen Jesus comes with his peace. And remember that peace in the kind of Hebrew language, shalom, means a whole lot more than the absence of noise or a little bit of calm and peace and quiet. This is the gift of life itself. Life that is whole, life as it should be. The one who died and rose from death comes with healing in his hands, in his wings. He comes to bring shalom, to make you well, to make us well. And then bearing this same gift, we are sent ones. Jesus says in the passage, "I send you, as the Father sent me, so I send you." And we go with this peace, this shalom, to a world that is unwell and very broken. Jesus, just walk right in. Will you just walk right in here, where we are, right now? Jesus, come. Risen Lord, come with your peace. For we need encounter. We need to touch and be touched. Thomas is tenacious in his desire, his demand, really, to know that what he's been told is really true. What does Thomas say? Unless I can put my fingers into the nail prints in his hands and put my hand into his side where the spear went, I will not believe this. Jesus obliges this one who has come in with his peace, offers his hands, his side. Stop doubting, Thomas, and believe, says Jesus. We don't know whether Thomas did or not. It doesn't say in the text. It looks like it was enough that Jesus was there. But there's this very physical, tangible evidence that the news of Jesus' resurrection, the reason for the empty tomb, very physical, very tangible. And Thomas moves to faith. My Lord and my God. He doesn't just move to faith and believing. He kind of excels, doesn't he? From doubting to my Lord and my God. Thomas, we know, has had a bit of bad press over the years. He's associated forever in everybody's minds with doubt. And it's a little bit unfair, frankly, isn't it? Because in this later moment, he is a man of faith who's moved to belief. Now, I want to just pick up on the words of Jesus. Stop doubting and believe. It sounds like it's our choice. Does it sound like that to you? Stop doubting and believe. Do it. Is it our choice alone, or is it something for which we need encounter? We need the presence of God. A few of us earlier on this morning praying together were kind of looking at this together. What seemed clear to us in this scene in the upper room, in the locked room, was that this encounter with Jesus was absolutely essential to turn a frightened bunch of guys into go-getters in God's kingdom, out there proclaiming boldly, fearless, tenacious. It's the encounter that makes the difference. It's the encounter with Jesus that convinces them that he has risen from the dead and that his presence goes with them in the world, that they can live confidently in the world. There always needs to be encounter. It's not enough to have words on a page, arguments rehearsed. I remember a friend of mine many years back in another church who was converted one morning when standing in church, reciting at the behest of the minister or the minister's invitation the words, Jesus is Lord, 3 times, Jesus is Lord. He had no active faith, but by the time that he'd got to the 3rd Jesus is Lord, he believed it. Isn't that an amazing thought? It was in that moment, in the blessing or the benediction, he was converted. It reminds me of a story of a minister who was converted by his own sermon. This really did happen. It was in kind of Victorian days, but he went to the pulpit with his well-prepared sermon, and he was convinced by his own sermon and converted there and then. I love that story, but it does underline that there needs to be more than the kind of rational acceptance of a proposition, that the reason for an empty tomb is that Jesus has risen. That vital encounter which brings life to us. I believe that it happens in different ways and at different times for people. I think we can make a mistake to say, this has to happen now in this way. There is process, there is journey. But I believe for every disciple of Jesus, to become an apostle, a sent one, to live confidently with this news of the resurrection, it needs to get up close and personal. It needs to be encounter. So yes, there is a choice to believe, to stop doubting and believe. But it seems to me that we're enabled to make that choice in the meeting place, in the encounter with Christ. We don't see Jesus in the way the disciples did. And Jesus remarks on that, doesn't he? He says, blessed, you've seen and you've believed, blessed are those who do not see and yet believe. That's us. We don't see in the way that those first disciples do, and yet we need the encounter. We need to know the presence of God, which brings faith, that sets us on fire, that brings us to life and sends us to be life bringers. So that brings me to those parts of our body that, if we think of the church as Christ's body, which may have lost some sensation, maybe numb through all that we've lived through these last couple of years. I want to invite you to a moment where we seek that encounter with Jesus now. I'm going to ask the band to come.